Welcome to Text Readings with Greg Stafford, where we progressively work our way through the ancient biblical books and records. At times, we consider other histories and texts, but our primary focus is the Bible, the books contained in the Bible, the collection of records that have existed for thousands of years, orally and in writing, that pertain to the people and the people of the God Jah. If you've been with me and us in our readings to this point in the book of Exodus, then I don't need to catch you up and bring you to speed. But if you haven't, I encourage you to watch the last two videos, where I do bring everybody up to speed all the way through to our last two readings. So I'm going to pick it up right from there, since we're in the middle of the ongoing discussion that's happening between Jaho and really the angel of Jaho, as the context and descriptions make plain, speaking to Moses before he goes back to Egypt to free Jah's people from slavery. So Moses is being confronted by the angel of Jaho, told all these things. He's been told the sign that he will be with him, that he won't need to show the people because it will be manifest in that way, by Jah's presence, by Jah's existence with him. And he gives him his name, Jaho, which Moses also speaks as Jah in the song he sings later on, which we'll consider in part in Exodus 15. So Moses has these things. He has the sign of Jaho's presence being with him, and he has Jaho's name in case the Israelites ask him. Then he's given the ability to work signs, miracles, turn a wooden staff into a snake, turn healthy flesh into diseased flesh. But even with these things, there's something bothering Moses. And I talked about in our last video how, when we consider this account, from our perspective, when we look back and we think of someone like Moses, right, the one who brought the Israelites out of Egypt through the Red Sea and is here with us now before all those things happen. We think of him in such impressive terms, and rightfully so, that we don't think he had any reason to doubt or to feel weak, uncomfortable. It kind of seems, at least to me, until I think about these things, these more human things, the context in which Moses is being sent out of Midian and back to where he left in Egypt. It's easy for us to see at times, or think when we read this account at times, how easy that might be for Moses just to respond, right? It's God or the angel of Jaho in a burning bush, so there's a manifestation of power. Why not? I mean, is that not enough? Why not just go forward in that power? You've seen it. You've been shown you can display miracles from this being. Why does Moses continue to doubt? And then that's when I talked about in our last show how, think of what Moses is facing. He's facing the greatest kingdom on earth. And even though he's being presented with this ability and this mission by this supernatural being, comparatively, at this moment, think of the difference between that being and all that he's doing to Moses and what Moses knows or associates with Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and their gods. So it's not so simple, is it? Moses isn't just overwhelmed by the power of a god. I'm sure he is in several respects, but it's not like he's never seen this, right? The magicians of Pharaoh's court have been there a long time. The gods of Egypt were there a long time. That's why their staffs turned into snakes when Moses threw his staff down. So Moses has seen things And he's seen more things now. But he still has a problem. And now it's not so much now what the Israelites might say, or whether or not he can convince them about this God, Jaho. Now it's something he has a problem doing. It's his own mouth. His inability to say the right things that he thinks he has to be able to say in the right way because he's being told and sent by this being, right? It's an important mission, wouldn't you say? And then to be able to speak the right way to fulfill a mission where you're going to go before King of Egypt, Pharaoh, and tell him, if you don't let your slaves go, my God is going to kill your firstborn. You think that might be difficult for someone who has a hard time speaking to say, even if you're able to gather up the courage to say the words, if you could say them the right way? Let's find out how this goes, because that's where we left off. And as everybody knows, Jaho responded at the end of our last account by telling Moses he's the one who makes the mouth. Jaho lets the words come out, or he closes the mouth so that no one can speak or hear or see. So now what does Moses say? Let's see. Exodus chapter 4. I'll go ahead and read from my translation of the Greek and Hebrew. I'll read them alternately. That's what you see here by H for Hebrew and G for Greek. So we've got 26 verses we're going to read, 13 in Greek and Hebrew, and you'll be able to see certain differences. There's not a lot of significant differences, so we won't get into that too much. But there are several significant elements in these texts, some of which we've talked about, and we'll get to the rest of them. So let's find out how this conversation goes with Moses and Jaho speaking through his angel, whom many believe to be the pre-existent Son of God, Michael, Jesus, same one, right? The archangel. But that's not a necessary conclusion. I'm just pointing it out because if you believe, like I do, that that's who it is, there's some significance, right? I mean, we all know the Son in different ways, so we can carry that with us and say, okay, the Son of God doesn't mess around. Why would he? Because remember, when you read this account, what's happening? The Israelites are about to be freed from Egypt. They were brought into Egypt when the Pharaoh was good, right? Not every reference to Pharaoh is bad. Pharaoh was good to Joseph, good to Jacob, good to the Hebrews for a long time. And then the next Pharaoh was not so good and, in fact, bad. So things change when people change. And that's what happened. But this is all for what to happen? The Messiah. The body that has to happen. The seed. That's the whole reason everything is still happening the way it is from the Garden of Eden. Because if the one whose body is being prepared is overseeing the preparation of that body, I think you could see why there's such a seriousness in the air. That hasn't happened yet. The Messiah has not been born. The body has not been brought forth. All of this is happening from the time when Jaho promised Abraham. That was the start, post-flood, of the selection process that has brought us to this point here, where the people that are part of that seed are going to be brought out of Egypt and freed. But they're being overseen by the one who must ensure his body is prepared correctly, because he's the one who's going to inhabit it, right? So why wouldn't he be extremely interested in its development by his own father through the Hebrews, the Israelites? So that's how I see what's happening. That's the significance of the overall context and why we're even reading this account in Exodus. Keep that in mind, because when you read about how the angel of Jaho acts, and if you believe the angel of Jaho is Jesus Christ, well, I think that will help you appreciate the seriousness in its words and actions in this account. So let's take a look. Verse 13, Hebrew text. But Moses began to say, we'll get to it in just a second. Okay, here we go. Verse 13, Hebrew text. Moses began to say, I beg you now, send forth another by your hand. Verse 13, Greek translation. But Moses said, I am begging you, Lord, choose another able person whom you shall send. Verse 14, Hebrew translation. Then anger with Moses showed in the person of Jaho, and he said, Is not your brother Aaron the Levite? I have learned he is able to speak. It is he who will speak, and indeed, behold, he is coming out to meet you. Once he has seen you, he will rejoice in his heart. Verse 14, Greek translation. That made Lord Jaho feel anger against Moses. That in verse 13 where he says, choose another person, right? I beg you, send someone else. After he's already told him in response to Moses' request that he's not going to need to worry about convincing the Hebrews. He's going to be with him. His presence with him will be the sign, Ehya. And after he's responded to Moses about the name that he's to tell them if the Israelites should ask. And then after he's given him the ability to display signs and miracles, he still wants Jaho to send somebody else. Jaho is not pleased with that kind of action or inaction, right? If he's coming to you and picking you, right? He understands your flesh and have limitations, but he knows those. Moses is still weak, though. And again, we have to look at the context in which all of this is happening, what he's being asked to do, what goes on there versus where he is, even though there's manifestation of divinity here too, just like the Egyptians would be able to display like they do, in fact, with the staffs turning into snakes. So Jaho is not pleased with that nonetheless, right? He expects us to respond, not to do the impossible, but to go. If he says go, go. Look at Jonah, right? If you don't listen to Jaho when he has picked you to do certain things, and if there are things that he is going to do through you, like with Jonah or Moses, right? Because of their involvement with certain things during a time when other things are happening, like Moses' reaction to the Hebrew slave being beaten, Jaho's reaction to the treatment of the Hebrews by the Egyptians, and him now, it being the time with the death of the Pharaoh wanting to kill Moses, as we'll see, him waiting for the right time to bring all these things about. So if he chooses Moses and the timing is right now, or if he chooses Jonah and the timing is right now, you're going to go. It's going to happen. Or, things could change in some way, like if he had to bring in Aaron, if Moses just totally backed down, right? Jaho's not going to totally force Moses to do everything. Moses has to comply. He has to be willing to some extent. So Jaho is working with him. But he is also not as patient, right, for understandable reasons. Their patience with us at all is quite something when you say, especially the ones who serve Jaho, because they're not to tolerate any of this stuff. They don't tolerate lack of faith. They don't have any of that where they are or in the presence of Jaho. You don't show lack of faith. You don't tell Jaho, send somebody else. If you're an angel in his presence, this is like foreign to them. This is not supposed to be happening, number one. And number two, it's what they are against. All of them. Even Jaho, of course, right? That's why he's upset. It doesn't matter, though. He's still going to use Moses. Moses is imperfect, and it's not the time to totally change out a figure. Even though he's going to couple him up with Aaron in the way, he still is, at this point, determined to use Moses. And Moses is willing, but he keeps going through this series of potential cop-outs, right? And even at the end, right here, it's not just potential. He asks him, just send somebody else, right? So there's a difficulty here. His speech, going back to Pharaoh, right? He fled there. They were going to kill him. Yes, This God is appearing to Moses now. They have gods in Egypt too. So looking at the whole situation, you can see why it would be hard for him to do. But you can also see why Jaho is not supposed to be we don't, just because something's hard for us in our sinful state, that doesn't mean that Jaho is going to all of a sudden accept it as the right way. We're just having a harder time doing the right thing. That's it. And it's not fair for us to try to make Jaho accommodate us to the point where what he says should be done doesn't happen. Right? That would be going, and that's where Moses is kind of getting, right? He's dangerously close to crossing the line. And so, but he doesn't. Jaho gets angry though, and he accommodates him by sending Aaron with him. So let's just read verse 14 again. Then the anger with Moses, verse 14 Hebrew, showed in the person of Jaho. Is not your brother Aaron the Levite? I have learned he is able to speak. So Jaho knows the different persons and what's going on. He knew Moses couldn't speak. Didn't matter, right? He's going to tell him what to say. Moses just lacked faith anyway. And so if we lack faith at times, we're not in bad company, right? We have a great cloud of witnesses all around us, including Moses. And he lacked faith big time right here. But he did go, right? Did Peter not lack faith 3 times at the most critical hour of the Messiah's life? He did. But he didn't quit. He kept going. And now we read him and his letters in a good light. But he denied the Messiah 3 times. Didn't quit, right? Didn't keep denying him. Didn't totally lose his faith. Same with Moses. So Jaho sees that too. It is he, Aaron indeed. Behold, he's coming to meet you. Once he's seen you, he will rejoice in his heart. 14 Greek. We read part of it or maybe all of it. Let's do it one more time. That made Lord Jaho feel anger. So he said, is not Aaron the Levite your brother? I know he is able to speak. He will speak for you. Indeed, behold, he will come out for a meeting with you, and seeing you, he will feel joy within himself. Verse 15, Hebrew translation. Once you have spoken to him, and you have set the right words in his mouth, then I will come to be with your mouth, and with his mouth. Now I have shown you what you must do. Verse 15, Greek translation. You will speak with him. Jaho was talking to Moses, telling him he's going to speak with Aaron. And you will put my words in his mouth. And I will open your mouth and his mouth. And I will educate you about things which you will do. We all know who that sounds like, right? The New Testament, Jesus Christ. John 7, 16, 17. Verse 16, Hebrew translation, Aaron is the one who speaks for you to the people. It has been determined that he will be as a mouth for you, and you will become as God for him. Verse 16, Greek translation, Aaron will speak for you to the people, and he will be your mouth, but you will be with him when it comes to things involving God. A little bit different in the Greek there from the Hebrew. And remember, too, Jesus could have quoted this text, could he not have, in John 10, when he was accused by the Jews of being a god or God? Right? He could have quoted this text and said, isn't it written in your law that Moses was God to Pharaoh? Or Moses became as God for Aaron to Pharaoh? So why do you have a problem with me? I'm the greater Moses. I'm the fulfillment. God sent me from heaven. He sent Moses from Midian after he fled Egypt. Well, the reason I don't think he did that is because he's a son of God. And while he could have brought a parallel application to some extent from the uses of God for Moses in these ways, the other sons of God are already called gods. So he's putting himself in the proper category to which he actually belongs. Not just as a man, even though that's true too in the sense that it is with Moses, right? He's certainly God to us as a man, the same way Moses was God, even more so, right? He speaks much more exactly than Moses spoke to Aaron or Pharaoh for Jaho. So he certainly is that in a greater sense. But when he appealed to Psalm 82, he was using the text that was most applicable to him as the Son of God. Verse 17, Hebrew translation, this staff you will take in your hand because with it you will do signs. Verse 17, Greek translation, this staff which was turned into a snake, you will take it in your hand. With the staff in your hands, you will work the signs. Verse 18, Hebrew translation, then Moses left and returned to Jethro his father-in-law, and he said, I should go now, and I should return to my brothers who are in Egypt. I should find out if they are alive. Jethro said to him, go in peace. Verse 18, Greek translation, then Moses left and returned to Jothor his father by marriage, and he said, I will go, and I will return to my brothers who are in Egypt, and I will see if they are still living. Jothor said to Moses, leave in good health. Verse 19, Hebrew translation, now Jaho began to say to Moses in Midian, go, return to Egypt, because all of the men seeking your life or your soul have died. See, Jaho knows the time. He knows when to go and when not to go, when to take you out and when to not take you out, when to bring you together with someone and when not to bring you together with someone. He's always aware. He's doing it all the time. More so than I think we realize. Either way, we can see it here because he's clearly aware of the conditions in Egypt before he sends Moses back. So it's not just like he's going to protect Moses completely in this bubble of power, right? Jaho doesn't work like that all the time. He does and he doesn't, right? He can keep you alive like if you're Jonah, if he has to. But that's not like the way he has to do it all the time. We have time. Sometimes we need time for things to happen. He needed time for the Israelites, even in their condition, in this imperfect world, of course, to develop relationships with each other, to have children, so that the seed could arrive. This is all because of the seed's arrival. And so timing is critical. So Moses began to take his wife and his sons, and they rode donkeys as they started to return to the land of Egypt. But Moses took the staff of God in his hand. Verse 20, Greek translation, then Moses took his wife and his children, and he mounted them upon donkeys, and he returned to Egypt. But Moses took the staff from God in his hand. So it's pointing out how closely he kept that staff with him, as there was obviously a lot of property and possessions to take with them. Not as much as they took leaving, but still, it's not like a simple trek where you don't have anything with you. Verse 21, Hebrew translation, then Jaho said to Moses, during your walk, as you return to Egypt, consider all of the amazing powers which I have set in your hand. Now you are to complete them in the presence of Pharaoh, but I will harden his heart when he does not send away the people. And notice that. Once Jaho realizes, and he already knows, right? He knows Pharaoh. He knows this Pharaoh. He knows what's going on. And once the Pharaoh he knows does what he knows is going on, right? Jaho knows what's going on in his heart. At that moment, once he decides, he's going to harden it. Because Jaho's not sending Moses back for the purpose of not releasing the Israelites gloriously. Either Pharaoh complies, and it's all good in that respect. He's going to have to change the conditions, right? These allowances are going to lead to a better life for Jah's people if he does. Or Jaho is going to bring them out no matter what. Either way is glory to Jah. That's what it's all about. That's what it's always been about. And people are glorified in connection with it, whether it's Moses, Jesus. It's about Jah. Glory to whom? Father. Philippians 2. All of that the Son did, all of it that he gets, Father. Verse 21, Greek translation, Lord Jaho said to Moses, as you are leaving and returning to Egypt, you must consider all the wonders which I put in your hands. And it wants him to think about it. Think about what I've done and what you have, the power I've given you. You're going to represent me to Egypt and to Pharaoh, nonetheless. You will do all these things before Pharaoh, or Pharaoh. That's not a misspelling, it's just my transliteration, as I said. I'm going to change it back to the anglicized term in my English translation, with a note with the transliterized names in their first appearance. But it's kind of like the song I have on my CW Jatu Lounge, Pharaoh. And remember, there's not just bad pharaohs, right? I'm not promoting a song about a bad pharaoh. I try not to. Right? Try to look at things in a good light, right? If there's a good option, think that way. Verse 22, but you will say to Pharaoh, this is what Jaho has said. Israel is my son, my firstborn. Verse 22, Greek translation, but you will say to Pharaoh, Lord Jaho says these things. Israel is my firstborn son. And here we have a usage of firstborn that sometimes Trinitarians will point to and say, you see, Colossians 1:15, Hebrews 1:6, firstborn, it doesn't mean like literal firstborn. Well, first of all, yeah, it does. Deuteronomy 21:17 makes that pretty clear, does it not? Do not the majority of the uses and instances of firstborn in the Hebrew Greek text, Old and New Testament, mean just that? A firstborn, literally, the first one born. But there are a couple instances where it can be used and is used figuratively with terms and in a context that make that plain. None of which are ever done with the Son. In this case, though, even though I see it as a figurative usage of firstborn because it's applied to like a whole nation, it nonetheless, just because something's figurative doesn't mean it doesn't have a sense of the literal application of the term, right? So how would Israel be God's firstborn son? Well, how would it be in a purely figurative sense, right? A firstborn literally, like Deuteronomy 21:17 says, means beginning of one's generative power. How would it be literally? Or figuratively, I should say, if that's literally, here with Israel. Well, this is the beginning of his power where it relates to the selection of a people through which he then birthed a nation. Right? What does he say to Abraham in Genesis 17? We're going to read it a little bit later after the end of the account. He makes it plain, right? He's going to multiply his seed like the stars of the heavens. Right? That Jaho chose Abraham as the nation of people, the one who would give birth to, as the father of the nation of Israel, right? So it really does involve actual birthing and growing into what is chosen to be something when it was not before that happened. So keep that in mind when it comes to the use of firstborn in this text. It's figurative because it's not applied to an actual person in the literal sense in which Deuteronomy 21:17 applies. But it still isn't disassociated from the temporality of the selection, being the first one of its kind, and birthed in that way, right? As well as in terms of the nation being produced through Abraham and his seed. All right, and again, none of those are really contextually similar to the literal applications to Jesus, but nevertheless, even figurative applications of these terms carry something with them that's important for us to connect. Verse 23, Jaho continues to say, I said to you, and this is him talking through Moses to Pharaoh, send my son so he may worship me. But you refuse to send him. Behold, I am killing your firstborn son. Greek translation, verse 23, I said to you, send my people, so they may give religious service to me. However, if you will not decide to send them forth, you must watch as I kill your firstborn son. Not something easy to say to Pharaoh, right? Even if you're Moses, you've got all these powers, but you have to believe. You have to trust. What else are we going to do? I don't really see another option, not one that's worth as much. Verse 24, Hebrew translation, then it happened by the road near him. All right, this is the last part of our reading. So Jaho has told Moses everything he needs now, right? Sign of his presence, name, giving him miracles and powers, and the staff. He's giving him Aaron to speak for him. And he's told him exactly what to say to Pharaoh. So he doesn't have to come up with it on his own and just, trust in God in that way, right? Did not Jesus say the same thing? What I heard, I'm telling you. I teach what is not mine, but what I learned from the Father. It's best to just teach exactly what Josh says, right? That's what we try to do in our overall context of worship and thought, right? 3 things. We try to just keep as close to the text as we can so that we don't go off. In any case, so he's got everything he needs. He knows what to say. He's got the powers. He's got the faith. He's got the person to speak for him. And so he goes on. He departs. And then in verse 24 it says, then it happened, or it came about that by the road near the inn, or by, kind of a place of lodging. In the Hebrew it says, Jaho met him, and he thought about killing him. The Greek text, then it occurred near the road by the inn, an angel of Jaho, of Lord Jaho, met with him, and he sought to kill him. Who is this him? Okay, so we have Moses, right? He took his son and his wife and their servants, and they're headed back to Egypt. Let's find out who this him is that this angel of Jaho has now caught up with them near the place of lodging and is seeking to kill. Verse 25, so Zipporah took a stony object, and she began to cut the foreskin of her son, and brought it to his feet, and said, because you are my blood relative. Verse 25, Greek translation, so Zipporah took a small stone and cut the foreskin of her son. Then she fell forward toward his feet, the angel of Jaho's feet, and said, the blood from the cutting of my child has stopped. Verse 26, our last text, and then we'll talk about this last part since we've kind of gone over the rest already. Verse 26, Hebrew translation, that is when he started to withdraw from him, after she had said, a blood relative, according to the cutting of the foreskin, or the circumcision. Verse 26, Greek translation, last part of our last text. And then we'll go back and talk about this specific part here. At that time he, the angel of Jaho, departed from him. We'll talk about that him in a moment. Because she said, the blood from the cutting of my child has stopped. What's going on here, right? What's happening? This becomes so clear when you realize 2 things. The covenant made with Abraham in Genesis 17, and who Zipporah is. So let's go ahead and take a look. I'll use the NWT because I haven't translated all texts. I may have to, let me see if I can get this all on the screen for you here. I may have to adjust it. So turn to Genesis 17 if you'd like. And we're going to read verses 1 through 14, and I believe this will explain that account we just read. The last few verses of our reading, Exodus 4, 13 through 26. So, Genesis 17. When Abram got to be 90 years old, Then Jehovah appeared to Abram and said to him, I am God Almighty. Walk before me and prove yourself faultless. Verse 2, and I will give my covenant between me and you, that I may multiply you very much. Very, very much. Verse 3, at this Abram fell on his face, and God continued to speak with him, saying, as for me, look, my covenant is with you, and you will certainly become a father of a crowd of nations. And your name will not be called Abram anymore, and your name must become Abraham, because a father of a crowd of nations I will make you. And I will make you very, very fruitful, and I will make you become nations, and kings will come out of you. Verse 7, and I will carry out my covenant between me and you and your seed after you, according to their generations, for a covenant to time indefinite, to prove myself God to you and to your seed after you. Verse 8, we're going to go to verse 14, very important, follow with me. I will give to you and to your seed after you the land of your alien residence, even the entire land of Canaan, for a possession to time indefinite, and I will prove myself God to them. Verse 9, and God said further to Abraham, as for you, you are to keep my covenant, you and your seed after you according to their generations. You are to keep my covenant. I will prove myself God to them. You are to keep my covenant. This is my covenant that you men will keep between me and you men, even your seed after you. Every male of yours must get circumcised. Verse 11, and you must get circumcised in the flesh of your foreskins, and it must serve as a sign of the covenant between me and you. And every male of yours 8 days old must be circumcised according to your generations. Anyone born in the house and anyone purchased with money from any foreigner who is not from your seed. Every man born in your house, verse 13, and every man purchased with the money of yours must without fail get circumcised. And my covenant in the flesh of you men must serve as a covenant to time indefinite. And listen to this last verse very carefully. And an uncircumcised male who will not get the flesh of his foreskin circumcised, even that soul must be cut off from his people. He has broken my covenant. He's talking to Abraham here. I mean, this isn't him talking to Moses later after they've left Egypt and giving him the law. So, who is Zipporah? Well, she is a descendant of Midian, one of Abraham's children by Keturah. If we just jump down here to Genesis chapter 25, we'll see that after the death of Sarah, great woman of Jaho, did many good things that we read about, of course. Sarah. In Genesis 25:1, furthermore, Abraham again took a wife, and her name was Keturah. In time she bore him Zimran and Jokshan and Medan and Midian. My text here is sometimes it puts little question marks where it's got different terms, but this is Midian. So Midian is one of the sons of Abraham by Keturah. So Zipporah was under obligation, was she not, according to Genesis 17:1 through 14, as a descendant of Abraham through marriage to Jethro, Greek transliteration, Jothor? She was. She did not circumcise Gershom, her child with Moses. Here she is going with Moses back to Egypt to confront the ruler of the world and bring out the people. She's following right. She's doing the right thing. She's with Moses. But she didn't do what she should have done before that happened, that compromised or almost compromised the life of her son. We read very clearly, did we not, in Genesis 17, 1 through 14, 14 specifically, every male not circumcised after the 8th day must be cut off. Now, remember, of course, things descending from Abraham and all the events that have occurred to the point where Egypt has risen, Moses then flees, meets up with Zipporah in Midian. So the extent to which there was a regular practice in accordance with the traditions learned from Abraham, we don't know, but we do know that they're descendants of Abraham who were required by Jaho to have this sign on all males of the proper age as a sign of the covenant he had with them. Now, why wouldn't Jaho have gone to her before this and done something like this? 2 reasons. Right? Number one, Jaho will always get to you. No one gets away. There's no getting away, right? It's just, can we get mercy from Jaho or not? That's it. Right? That's as good as we can get, and that's good. That's good enough. We're all doing things wrong, and he's been merciful to us. We'll take it, right? We'll take it. We should. But now Jaho is aware of Moses, right? And Moses is with Zipporah. So that brings Zipporah right to Jaho, not just as a follower in the land of Midian, but now she's like right there with Moses, who is directly with Jaho and his angel, doing all these things, right? About to display power for Jah's praise, help Jah's people be freed. So she's getting more attention. She's going to get more attention, and the angel of Jaho realized she is headed with Moses to serve Jaho, the God no one disrespects, right? Or you die. And she has not circumcised her son. So notice the account, right? The angel of Jaho doesn't kill her on the road. He waits until they stop at a hotel, because he's really not trying to kill Zipporah. The account in Genesis 17, 1 through 14, specifically verse 14, doesn't say if the child isn't circumcised, you kill the mother. It says you kill the child. So Zipporah actually endangered her child by not following the law, the covenant, the sign of the covenant told to Abraham that would mark them as the people of his covenant, that Moses is now going to free, and so that the fulfillment of the promises regarding the land of Canaan and the Messiah ultimately can happen. So now the angel of Jaho knows there is no stopping Jaho. No. You can only do things that he allows you to do, and that if you do them in a way he doesn't want you to do, he'll just do things he has to do to get around them or deal with it. That's it. He's always wanting us to do the right thing, right? So Zipporah didn't do it in this case. Is Jaho supposed to break his covenant with Abraham? So Zipporah didn't circumcise Gershom. Now she's going with Moses without the sign on her child of the covenant between God and Abraham. Not a good idea, right? Because one of 2 things has to happen. Jaho has to accept the breaking of his covenant while he's with Moses, Zipporah, and Gershom. When in Genesis 17 he said, I will prove myself God to them if they keep my covenant. So how, you see, if he allows Zipporah to just keep breaking his covenant, how is he going to be with Moses? The covenant through Abraham is that he would be with Abraham's seed if they keep the covenant. Here he's with a woman that's part of Abraham's seed, not keeping the covenant with her child by Moses. Or even Moses, right? And so either way, the angel is there to fulfill the law given to Abraham regarding the covenant that would show Jaho is with his seed if they're circumcised, all the males, after the 8th day. He's not. Gershom is not. So the angel of Jahoah is there to do Jahoah's will. Child must die. We'll wait till they get to the end. We'll wait until Zipporah is not so close to the child, right? I don't want to distress her so badly and create more trauma than I have to, because she broke Jah's law. And that cannot stand, because the sign of Jahoah's presence being with Moses, Abraham's seed, she's not fulfilling. And so I'm going to fulfill it, right? That's what the angel of Jahoah is saying. I'm going to fulfill that law. I'm going to kill the child because you didn't follow the law given to your ancestor Abraham. So now the angel of Jahoah is there at the end. Zipporah is like, whoa, so this, she can tell now something's going on. This she knows that this is not your ordinary average person there. Moses is not obviously not helping her. We're not really given a lot of detail beyond, just the fact that the angel of Jahoah was trying to get to the child, but Zipporah could tell, right? She could tell there was something going on. So the angel of Jahoah is not like killing her and throwing her out of the way and stuff, right? He's just trying to get to the child, and she sees it. Think of Jahoah. The angel is just doing what has to be done for the presence of Jahoah to continue to be with Moses in fulfillment of Genesis 17, which Zipporah is compromising. So the angel of Jahoah is there about to kill the child, and she does what? Fulfills the law. Fulfills the requirement given to Abraham that the foreskin of the child be circumcised. The angel of Jahoah lets her do it, and he's appeased, right? You don't mess with Jahoah. You don't break his covenant in these ways, especially back then, right? This is like the most important time. We have it easy compared to them, right? Things had not been completed yet. Messiah is being developed. His body is being developed. The people are being developed. Time is passing. Jahoah is allowing these things to occur, managing everything, allowing things to occur, judging. So there's nothing that's going to stand in the way. There's no, if there's no compassion for what's ultimately going to cost you your life anyway. You don't get rewarded with life for disobeying Jahoah. It's that simple. So, but we can be given mercy, right? And thereby more life now than in the future. But if push comes to shove, right, then we die. We don't keep living so that Jahoah's laws are broken. No. We die because those laws are fulfilled. There is no law of Jahoah that goes unfulfilled. None of them. Name one. Eventually they're all done. So it's never going to be the case that our own condition or circumstances or anything is going to displace Jah's will. Why should it? That would just be displacing something that's the best for something that's ill. Not good, right? The child didn't have a sign of the covenant made with Abraham to show he is part of Jahoah's seed and to have his presence with him. Is that not a big deal? It's huge. All right, but we can learn a lot from Zipporah. We can learn that there's consequences to not doing things the way that you know is right according to the text, right? But that you don't just give up, right? And she didn't give up. She had a window of time there, you could say, but she did it right. She saw there was a problem. She knew she hadn't done what she should have done according to the tradition they had learned from their ancestors, Abraham and those after him. All the Midianites from Midian, Abraham's child. So she acted quickly, right? It's kind of like, in one sense, the criminal who was killed by Jesus. His whole life, probably, crime or a lot of it. He's there being killed, and even in his own testimony, righteously, for good reason. But he did not quit. He still had breath left. He still had spirit. He had the Son of God right next to him. Don't you ever quit. You can be brought down. And you can be forced to stop. But don't ever quit on your faith. Do not ever quit on Jaho. What evidence is there that they're quitting? That they're not providing us with things that are allowing us to continue even in this state, let alone opportunities for the next one, right? And so when we look at accounts like this and the way they're said to have interacted with these people like Abraham and Zipporah, right? And the child, and the fact that she didn't follow the tradition passed on through Abraham, the significance of that at this time, how serious the angel of Jaho is, right? What did Jaho say? It says later, actually, but we can see the seriousness already. He's not going to pardon you. This is not the time for, if you don't do these things, you're already being pardoned for so many things, right? Right now, we need you to focus even more so. I'm kind of speaking colloquially, but there's a period of time during which people had to listen or they died. It's that simple, right? Touch the ark, you die. The presence of Jaho is not a laughing matter. And even if you laugh inside your heart like Sarah did one time, right, they know about it. And then they don't always hold it against you, right? What ended up happening? She had a child. What she thought couldn't happen, happened. They know everything, our minds, our hearts. So let's try to keep our minds and hearts protected, right? Try to fulfill Jah's laws to the extent we can. In our case, we worship him with our whole heart, soul, and mind. We follow his son, and we try to look at his life as a model for our own. And we follow the golden rule to treat each other the way we want to be treated so we don't practice hypocrisy, right? Like the scribes and Pharisees and others. So, a lot of great stuff as always in our videos. I thank you for joining me for our text reading. We'll get back into our text readings next week. We've got some readings to do. We're going to skip a little bit. I haven't done all of the texts in Exodus or Genesis, but I'm working my way through them. So we'll move to chapter 6 and several other chapters where I've done parts of those chapters. And then we'll just continue our way into the next books or parts of the books of the Bible that I've done. Tomorrow I will be back for another live stream, part 8 of the Bible and the Trinity in conflict. So I hope you'll join me for that event. Until then, enjoy your weekend, and may Jah bless you in Jesus' name.